Okay, let's kick things off. Welcome everyone to our conversation on GPT, LLMs, and generative AI, and wrapping all of that up in what it means for customer support. My name is Jonathan Koo. I'm the VP of Operations here at Mavenoid, and happy to serve as your moderator today. We've got some great panelists and speakers for you today. Want to introduce them really quickly. So we have Omar Ahmad joining us from Positech. He's a Senior Director of Operational Excellence, where he oversees customer service, warehousing, and distribution. He brings over 20 years of experience in sales and operations leadership, experience in project management, warehousing, supply chain, software, everything and everything. So Omar, we're really happy to have you with us. We also have Galina Rozenko joining us from the Mavenoid side, who is our VP of Product and basically our resident expert in all things support. She brings over 10 years of experience building efficient, user-friendly products for a variety of industries, everything from telecom to health and fitness and energy, and now obviously customer support. Galina, thank you for joining us. And then lastly, we have Gerard Dupont joining us from Mavenoid as well. He is our head of machine learning at Mavenoid. And Gerard holds a PhD in computer science and has a background in natural language processing, conversational search, and other industrial applications. So Gerard, thank you so much for joining us. All right, some quick housekeeping before we kick things off. The webinar will last approximately 1 hour. So we'll start things with an introduction from Galina on generative AI, GPT, LLMs, and what they are. From there, we'll hop into our Q&A with Omar, who's going to share his expert predictions on expectations and where AI is going in the space, particularly in the world of support. We'll follow that up quickly with some questions directed towards Gerard and Galina. These were previously submitted questions on the topic of AI from our product support community, so they have some in-depth answers for folks there. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with an open Q&A for all of our panelists. Just a reminder, please submit any of your questions that you do have through Zoom, and we'll do our best to get to every single one of them. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Galina, who will give us our introduction.
Sweet. Thank you, Jonathan. So yes, and we will start with the very quick refresher of what are those things, generative AI, GPT, LLMs, because we hear those terms quite often, and many of you probably know what they are again, but just to summarize, I have this nice diagram that gives you sort of a relationship between those terms. So first one comes the most general one, and it's generative AI. Why it is generative? Because it's a family, a huge family of machine learning models that can generate novel, new, not existent before data, which is similar to the data it's been trained of. So it has seen lots of pictures or descriptions of cats or nature or washing machines, and it can create a very new, never existent before image of a washing machine, depending on what is the specs that you will give it. And data here means many things: text, images, audio, but also we are the most excited about the opportunity to use them in combination, because this opens up really cool use cases for visual instructions that are very easy to follow, which is what we really like to prioritize at Mavenoid. The next thing here is a subset of generative AI, which comes under the abbreviation of LLMs, stands for large language models. And these are the models that work with text. So they produce human-like text by predicting the next word in a sentence given the previous words. So it can take bullet points and rewrite them, or it can take your input, which is called prompt, and rewrite it in something that sounds grammatically and stylistically correct, as if a human would say that. It can also be in a certain style. You ask it to be more casual, and it will give you, yo, of course, open the door of your washing machine. So it's going to be following the structures of language. And finally, we have GPT. So GPT, you will see it a lot. You, of course, know of ChatGPT, which is a brand name of a product created by a company called OpenAI. And there has been many more GPTs before ChatGPT, earlier ones. We started using them quite early, 2020, 2021, when it was the very, very old sister GPT-2, GPT-3. But today you will see a lot of products that have GPT in their name because they are they want to attach themselves to the success of ChatGPT, which is the first product that is consumer friendly, that is friendly to non-developers, where people can really play with all the advancements of large language model provided by OpenAI. So that's just a refresher. Now that we have it, what does that mean? So on the next slides, I will give you a quick overview and summary of our user research, our interviews and conversations with customers, so people seeking support, then with agents, people trying to help those people seeking support, and with support leaders. But just a disclaimer, because we only deal with hardware companies, this is all going to be really skewed towards, people looking for help with hardware, agents helping people with hardware products. So this will probably not be that applicable to, travel industry or people looking for help with their with writing poems. So starting with the first thing on the consumer side, what we see is that the attitude to automation and automated assistance has changed dramatically since ChatGPT started taking over the world. Previously, when we introduced automation, we would put automation in front of the person in user testing scenario. They will sometimes be quite cautious. They will be skeptical a little bit because, oh, it's a bot. Direction could be meh sometimes. Now, when we talk to them, it's more about, oh, cool, I want to play with this new thing. What if it's gonna give me really cool answers like ChatGPT, or maybe it will exceed ChatGPT? So there is first thing. Then the second thing is they immediately start thinking about, okay, where does this data go to? Is it secure? What's gonna happen? So a little bit of concern in the mix. And the third one, this is very specific to hardware. When we put it in front of them, they actually ask questions. Okay, like, who's going to be responsible if it gives me the wrong advice? Can I trust it? Where is this advice coming from? And as I put it in a chat bubble on this slide, as one respondent said, if I wanted to use ChatGPT, I would go to ChatGPT. To that window, but I am coming on the brand's website. I want to use advice that is trustworthy and validated. Tell me, where is this coming from? So this quote is quite descriptive of the general sentiment of people dealing with hardware and using automation for hardware. They want more trust because the cost of mistake is high. Moving on to support teams, first of all, it's yet another promise to reduce routine work. And not all the agents and supervisors are immediately happy and jumping at it because they've seen those promises before. And some of them were not fulfilled. We all remember probably the first wave of bots in 2017, 2018. Everyone had a bot, but then those bots were taken down. Why? Because they were quite underwhelming. So there is a bit of a mixed perception here. Next thing is, it's actually exciting. It creates a really cool growth path. We know of quite a few cases where people who were like more senior agents or supervisors got a promotion into an automation specialist, automation architect, and similar roles. created by additional features and additional tooling available in the company's tool belt. So if you are a support leader listening to this and you're looking for ways to keep your best people in the team, this could be one of the career paths to offer them. And trust me, they crave promotions, they crave skill development. They just sometimes don't see it right away in front of them. Finally, the third one, and we have to address elephant in the room. And this is yet another quote that I have from a support person, which says exactly this. Are you saying that when the support volume is automated 30–40% or more, you're not going to lay off 30 to 40% of the CX workforce? Really? Tell me, what are we going to be doing? How are we going to be useful to the company? In fact, there are lots of ways. And in addition to new roles, there are options just to increase your key metrics, faster first response time, better quality of troubleshooting for harder use cases, better follow-ups, better NPS, more attention spent on people who really need support. So, but this has to be explained to people who ask this question, because they ask it in their head. So really something to like lay out to them. Finally, support leaders, a lot of fear of missing out. A lot of companies started talking about AI and baking AI and large language models into their main functionality. And there is a lot of confusion, like, am I using the best AI? Which I really wanted to rephrase as, am I using the best AI for my use case and industry? The next one is, it's yet another promise of huge cost savings, which may or may not realize. And finally, tons of questions, deeply technical questions suddenly started coming their way. So CX leader now has to prepare to answer, like, how is this tied to our key metrics? What's the impact on security? Can I control it? Generally prepared to have like an ROI conversation with the C-level management about metrics of new AI functionality and all the risks associated with it. So with that, I wanted to transition to my last slide in this series, which kind of maps out our recommendations for the use cases. How can LLMs be used for hardware support? So I broke it down into basically two dimensions. So horizontally, the accuracy dimension, aka, is it safe to fail? When it hallucinates, when it makes things up, is it going to be a catastrophe or not? And then on the vertical scale, we'll look at the main skill of the LLM, where it shines, and it's the quality of writing. Is it important for this use case or not? So the first group of use cases, our green zone, is everything where human is in the loop, and typically it's a qualified human, like an agent, and the quality of writing really makes or breaks the experience. So when it helps agents write a nice response in a chat faster, suggest the best canned response, when it creates new self-service content, but then someone validates whether this content makes sense, or rewrites bullet points into a great instructions, step-by-step guide, this is great. Also, when it highlights trends or summarizes things for a qualified person like an agent. So this is a safe zone, and this is what we prioritize. The yellow zone, where you have to be careful, but we are already doing this. These are things where it can answer product queries from employees. So employee can use their best judgment to see, okay, should I use this advice or not, typically. In some cases, it can recommend the product to buy. in some cases, it can suggest an FAQ article, but I was hesitating. Maybe it's already a red zone. It's not always accurate when it comes to hardware. And the red zone comes in a situation where the cost of mistake can be very high. You follow the wrong advice, you can cut your fingers, you can damage your hearing, or you give AI full reins without supervision, and it can make automated decisions based on support data that is not super clean. So these are the areas where, after our experiments, we feel like AI is not yet ready to handle hardware support scenarios independently. Worth looking into, but is it gonna be in front of users? Probably not too soon. With that, I actually wanted to hand it over to you, Jiku, and then to Omar for a Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Galina. It's really helpful to understand, specifically on those use cases where AI is particularly effective currently versus where we need additional development. So thank you for that. So now I want to bring in Omar and really get your experience and expertise around where AI is going and how it relates to support. So we have a few questions for you. Maybe to kick things off, let's start with the bigger picture, right? There's a lot of rapid developments in AI. What are some of your longer term predictions for how AI will shape the customer experience, particularly when it comes to supporting hardware products?
Yeah, and before I get into the details, the views expressed are my own and not of those of Positech. A little legal disclaimer there, but yeah. So what does the future look like for AI? And based upon what I'm seeing from a customer experience perspective, there is always budget pressures at any companies, and save cost savings, things of that nature. And from my past experience, I have seen that there are a lot of general tasks and things like that that we might have a high cost as we're answering telephones or sending emails and things of that nature. And where I think, where AI is today and where it could go is, as I'd like to see it, to the point where we are automating as much as possible for those generalized questions and things of that nature. As Galina said, maybe the technology is not ready today to answer direct questions, but in the future, I definitely foresee it there. I also see it being within the hardware itself, and there could be, where there could be a failure, and we know of the failure prior to the consumer. So I would say that the future is very bright from a customer experience perspective. It's only going to improve, but it's going to take a little bit of time also to refine those tools and those capabilities that are out there.
Got it. And then, so then thinking a little bit more practically today, as you think about implementing AI in current present day and its current status, what are some of those expectations that are kind of table stakes for you that you say, hey, we really need these things to be present in order for us to move forward? What are some of those specific use cases that are kind of top of mind for you?
Yeah, first and foremost, one of the use cases that I would say that really helps is, so Galina, you had mentioned earlier that the AI could create jobs, and I had to take a note on that, because as I was thinking about that, when I first started with Mavinoid, I actually created a job to run our analysis, and also the other portion of the job is also creating the flows in Mavinoid. And one of the requirements and why I had to create that position was because we need to be able to mine the data, and we need to be able to understand what's coming into the tool so that we can then create additional flows and information to where we can set that up on the front end versus not having that in the tool, that content there. So, and today I know my team is working on the search gaps that Mavinoid provides. And instead of having to go through, one by one, what every single user in the tool input, search gap allows us to consolidate it automatically with with the Mavinoid technology, and we can see and rack and stack to say, here's the top searched item that they may or may not got an answer for, and here is even a suggestion of what that should look like. So really, really great. That's definitely, we are headed in the right direction with that. I think AI is only going to help in those manners, right? So instead of spending time creating a lot of content, writing things in a certain way, having to hire outside professional writers, even image generation and working with marketing and going through those pieces, I hope to see that AI puts the tool in my team's hands so that they can generate all that material versus having to reach out and spend a lot of time. We can get content out a lot faster, and it's only going to improve from there.
Got it. That's really helpful to think about it as kind of that multiplier on top of the expertise and the product knowledge that your team brings.
Absolutely.
I think thinking about this maybe as a little bit of a skeptic as well, maybe for people in similar positions at other organizations, what are some of the potential concerns or maybe challenges that you would anticipate implementing AI into your organization? Do you kind of immediately go to what are some of the technical challenges, or are there organizational challenges that you may anticipate for someone who's trying to move forward in this process of bringing in a more automation into their space?
Yeah, I think that first and foremost, we're always concerned with any new technology and the behavior. And as we're looking at AI, there are some cases where AI wasn't accurate enough, and any company from a liability perspective, I'm sure, is very concerned with that. So that's obviously one of the overarching concerns that are out there, which then push into the direction saying that as the technology evolves, you're going to have human interaction to make sure at the least that a human is reading through what is being generated and being published out but prior to being published, that's out there. So I think that's one of the overarching pieces. But if there's a new company that's looking to adopt, I would just also say that just make sure. A lot of companies say they have AI. Just make sure you ask the right questions, the detailed questions enough so you can understand exactly how that's being generated in the back, so that there's varying levels of advancement of AI. So just AI is just very generalized at this point. So what is the nuts and bolts? Let's pop the hood on the car and take a look at how does that work.
Got it. So really kind of dive into the details, but then also thinking about it at that kind of 80-20 perspective of AI will get you most of the way there, but have that layer of kind of oversight from your experts, your in-house experts, to kind of make sure that you're pushed over that line.
For now.
Yeah, for now. Fantastic. Yeah, I guess my next question for you, kind of similar vein. Every organization has their own kind of company values, way that they approach support, brand compliances, things of that nature. How do you think about AI, and particularly as it generates more on its own? Like, what level of control do you expect today for the AI solutions that you kind of look to and look to implement? Because that aspect is important from any company culture perspective.
Yeah, I think right now, as it stands today, we still need that full control to where, and to define that a little bit, in my opinion, is the AI is still being filtered through a person, right? So that in the case of, we have the AI generate something for us. So if it's in Mavinoid, AI suggestion, so we can write something in the flow, the AI will then translate that, differently, make sure the grammatical is all there and accurate. That's okay. Like, then we would go ahead and publish. We feel comfortable with something of that nature. But I would say that, over time, I would hope that that's less and less evolved, but we have to have a level of confidence in the platform to make sure, that for safety purposes and, legal reasons, right, we want to make sure that those are all in place and we have control over that. Or the software is trusted enough and proven itself enough to say that, yeah, we can give it a little bit more, ability to be direct with the customer versus it going through us first. So, But yeah, I hope, like I said, as I predict in the future, I hope over time, though, the tool can be refined to the point where we have less and less human involvement on that, and we could see the performance of it, of course.
Yeah, so it always comes down to that accuracy, the specialization, and the more and more that is dialed in, the less kind of human effort that you need to put in, but always having that kind of last check for the time being, making sure that it's fully compliant, fully accurate, just to kind of mitigate those risks.
And Jonathan, I think one more thing to add to that is that as Galina mentioned earlier, that there are varying levels of chatbots that are out there, or self-service tools, and it's important that you have the right customer experience. And as you implement the various tools, or new advancements do come out, or features, let's say in Mavinoid, there will be reiterations of the strategy on and how the customer experience is within call centers. In the beginning, in adopting Mavinoid, we redirected a lot of customers through the Mavinoid tool first, in hopes that their generalized questions could be answered within the tool, but it's providing a very nice experience. And then as some of this AI evolves and gets better and better, that experience, I predict it only going to get better for that end user. And by the way, it's a great user experience today. And then in the end, we can then utilize our human resources to be able to handle the more advanced issues, the more advanced troubleshooting and challenges that might be out there. So we could really focus our labor while a lot of those generalized questions are being answered within the tool, but with a good experience for the consumer.
Got it. So always keeping that CX kind of core to the approach. Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Last question for you before we kind of keep things rolling. Lots of developments, lots of changes going on all the time. Where are the places that you're going to make sure that you're staying up to date on the latest in the advancements of AI and support? And what are some of those sources that you rely on?
It's kind of funny. It's social media is where I see it all first, and then over time later, then I'll see the business applications come out with it, and I'll see how people are utilizing it. They'll be posting videos and things of that nature and social media, and then my brain gets going, wow, I wonder if a partner like Mavinoid could implement something like that, because I can use it in this and that way. So yeah, social media first, and then if I need a deep dive, then I'll do some Google searches to understand it a little bit, a little bit more technical, I guess you could say. But yeah, social media is really driving.
Yeah, I feel like every third or fourth post that I see on LinkedIn is something around AI or GPT. So I'm totally with you there. Well, Omar, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back in a little bit, but going to hop over to quick Q&A with Galina and Gerard. So as a reminder, some of these questions were submitted in advance from our product support community. A quick plug to join that if you have not already. But the first questions, or group of questions that I should say, maybe Gerard, I'll point your way. So, what is the current state of LLMs today? What are some of those open source models that are out there that are potentially being used by ourselves or other companies out there in the space? And how can they start being applied to hardware support? And how do they compare to more specialized LLMs that are out there?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't know who submitted the question, but these questions are particularly on point for me today. So if you can switch to the next slide, I will try to answer the first one. So the current state of the LLM. So I pull out this picture. This is not mine. This is a famous researcher and industry expert that is doing a catalog of LLM since, let's say, the beginning of LLM, which is way before ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is end of 2022. It's in the blob that I think it's a little bit hidden, but the trend already started from the industry or research point of view with GPT and transformer model. GPT is actually generative pre-trained transformer. So this is the big let's say, technical breakthrough that was done in 2018, and on which every of these models have been built. So timeline on the x-axis, and you see the size of the model, the number of parameters on the y-axis. So very simply, it's getting faster, more and more models. And these models, well, on one side, they are getting bigger. So you see the biggest one is Wudao 2, which is from Baidu in China. But yeah, we are trying to see a limit here on the size. So the new model are not actually bigger and bigger and bigger. OpenAI already told everyone that they have GPT-4, but they are not working on GPT-5. It will not happen because, yeah, there is a limit to the size today. But yeah, it's getting fast, and there is a lot of different direction and a lot of things to explore and to understand the differences between these models, their capabilities, where they have advantages, where they have inconvenience. Smaller model may be a little bit less precise, but they can be embedded. They have a faster response time, like compared to ChatGPT, for example. But yeah, GPT-4 and the family of GPT-4 models, they are getting the most of the knowledge of the language based on their huge training sets. So yeah, a lot to learn, a lot to explore. And to be honest, I'm in the domain myself. I've been on that area for more than 15 years now. But yeah, the pace on which the new model are accelerating today, it's quite amazing. And there is a lot of things coming up. On the next slide, on the open source side of things, so it's just very recent, only 2023 March to June. Maybe the latest model in June are not accurate yet. So there is a lot of open source model. It's not only OpenAI and Google and Facebook. Many big organizations, even big or industrial organizations, are sharing models. So this model, technically, you should be able to run them on your machine. We have made some experimentation on our side with Llama and Alpaca. So this is very interesting because these models are not on par with the commercial model yet, but open source is always catching up, and it's catching up quite quickly. So we are expecting in the 6 months to 1 year to have open source model that are on par with GPT-4. This is almost a given. But the difficulty with this open source model is that it's a licensing nightmare. So all of the red one that you see here, based on the Llama model from Facebook/Meta, so their research lab, these are not compatible with commercial applications. This is research only licensing, and this is a contaminating license. So you have to be very careful with this open source model because they are very promising, very interesting, but you have to check that if it's compatible with your commercial application. Things are evolving in that direction, but there is still many efforts to reproduce GPT-3 and GPT-4 model today at smaller scale, at smaller cost. So again, open source model promising. We would not bet on them on the short term. It will probably take 1 year or 2 before you can do serious commercial application on this open source model. And then the last point about why having specialized model and a company that is, let's say, restricting their activity to a specific area and specific vertical is a very obvious way of presenting things. I mean, do you want to work with a generalist or do you want to work with a specialist? I mean, this OpenAI, a very large model, they have a very broad vocabulary. They have been trained on massive data sets. So sometimes you see the claim that they have consumed the whole internet. Just take this claim with a grain of salt. They are consuming a good part of the internet, but which is still less than 10% of the internet, for example. They have a very good understanding of language and not only English. We have made some tests recently on GPT-4. It's quite good on more than 50 languages, but their understanding of the verticals and their detailed understanding of the concept in every vertical is shallow. And that's the drawback. If you're a generalist, you cannot go too deep into a domain. And that's where the customized language model fine-tuned to a vertical is a promising area today. And this is the way we are doing it in Mavenoid. So we are taking a pre-trained LLM that was trained on a massive part of the internet. And then we are fine-tuning it to our vertical. So it understands the exact terminology, the exact name entities of your domain, and you have a better grasp on how users express their problem, for example. I mean, OpenAI knows about the street slangs and the poetry. Our model doesn't, but we don't care because we want our model to understand our user. And yeah, I dropped here a graph, which is a little bit of a spoiler because this model is not fully in production, only on restricted organization today. But just to highlight that on our vertical, we are not claiming to be better than OpenAI on everything, but on our vertical, which is hardware troubleshooting, the Mavenoid fine-tuned model has a significant gain compared to OpenAI ADA 002, which is the one that you can use for embeddings, a specific task for search. And it's also better than the Google Palm and Cohere, which is also a big startup in that domain. So being specialized into your domain is actually very valuable, and this is where we are bringing value, and we have still some margin for improvement in our own vertical today. So we are very confident that we will keep a little bit ahead of these big players that are too generalist for our vertical. Yep.
Got it. Thank you, Gerard. And just for me as the non-technical person on the call, you know, thinking through, hey, the more focused the data that you're feeding into the model, right, the better it's going to be able to understand your specific challenges, generate materials and language that are specific to your use cases. So at the end of the day, that kind of feeds into the experience and the customer experience that you're seeing for that specific use case. Got it. Thank you again. Next question. This one is for Galina. So what are some of the examples of LLMs in use for support today? I know you shared earlier some of the areas where, you know, it's better to be used, some areas where it's a little bit more risky. What are some of those examples, and how can AI help teams in particular manage the vast amounts of support content that they have, you know, hundreds of articles and manuals that they have today?
Sure. So I have a few examples today. They are mostly those that we are confident in and that we decided to put in front of people. But there are many more examples that are still in testing, validation, beta testing mode. So the first one is actually tackling the cold start problem. You want to launch a new product and you don't want to build it manually. So we are now upgrading the auto generation functionality that gives you exactly that. You ask it to generate you a flow for, in this case, a wireless keyboard, a gaming keyboard, and in 25 minutes, approximately, it gave me a decent flow that I could polish a little bit, add some escalation scenarios, add some images from the library, and it's ready to go, and it's ready to help people with the popular issues. So this is one promising trend that we see where it can really accelerate people working on self-service content while still giving companies control over what goes in front of their user, because only after validation and this flow being checked, it goes out. The next one is the answer to that question where someone asked, okay, how can AI help people, help support teams put their support material at work? So we've been working on this thing for quite a long time. It's one of the most prominent research projects at Mavenoid because it's 100% proprietary. So the one where we digitized and deconstructed the PDF manual, all shapes and forms with tables, orientations, images, different languages, different styles of writing, different structures. So we learned everything we could about manuals, and then we taught the AI, our large language model, to understand that and to provide the right bits and pieces from this manual, which manifests itself in features like search in manuals for end users, or for support teams through the extension that gives you access to all this documentation. So slashes a lot of time that otherwise people would spend downloading the manual, doing Control F and trying to find that answer that may or may not be there. And if it's not there, going to the next manual and the next manual and the next manual. So this is something we're really proud of. Unfortunately, none of the publicly available models were able to do it, so we had to do our own. And finally, 2 more examples. So this is the one that helps people like me, whose language is the primary language is not English, but we still want decent writing. We still want to produce great instructions that are easy to read. So we call it a AI copy editor, and you give it bullet points, you give it copy paste from somewhere, from some internal document, it rewrites it for you, so you can quickly create really good, clear instructions. And finally, the one that summarizes self-service steps for agents. So when a new chat arrives into agent dashboard, and because self-service part of our tool is very thorough, there can be 50 steps where someone was trying to troubleshoot their problem. They were offered different solutions. They were offered different combinations. They may have looked up something in the external database. So it's very, very long transcript. We summarize it for the agent in this nice quick summary, so they can jump on it right away. So these are just some of the uses where it's already there, and we have companies using it either in full availability or in closed beta. Now, to answer the question in chat, it's a very good question. That when we use AI in our chat service, I understood that there is full protection of data and it doesn't go out. But with AI, will AI still be bringing the user behavior continuously from outside tools like ChatGPT to organizations' internal chat service? If I understand this question correctly, the question was about the safety and the data, whether this data is being sent anywhere, and what are the guardrails and protection available. And I have to say the question is spot on, because this is one of the reasons why we have some of the customers of Mavinoid, they banned the use of ChatGPT in their organization, and specifically in support teams. And this is not one example, these are multiple examples. So yes, with ChatGPT, you cannot be sure that things that you put there are not used for whatever, for training, for education of the general model. While this is why it's important to provide really strict guidelines for data and decide which data is kept internally, which data is only crunched by internal LLM, and which data can be sent outside. And what do we do before we send that data outside? Things like anonymization, just messing up personal data, removing personal data. So nothing that is sensitive can ever go out there to be fed to the model. And obviously, you need to check, if you're using some model, you're building your own service, and you're using some model there, is there anything in terms of service that says that the data sent is not being used for training of the model, or you can keep it anonymized, or you can erase it. So I would say that's quite important, and that's why in its vanilla state, ChatGPT is probably not the tool that can be used for agent assistant and answering end user queries. I see, Gerard, that you have your hand raised. So
yeah, I think your answer was fairly complete. If I can just add one more thing, is about the open source model, that in the future, we will be able to host ourselves to replace some of these features that are offered by ChatGPT. In the future, we might be able to not go through ChatGPT and then to be able to use this LLM in a live conversation. But today, yeah, we are not using LLM in the live conversation. This is just to prepare the flow that are executed to the conversation. And we are watching very carefully and making prototypes on the open source model, but they are not ready yet. And they will not be ready before 1 year or maybe 2 to have the capability to reach the same level of performance, the same level of precision as GPT-4, but in a way that you can host and control everything. So that's why there is a balance. There is technology watch and to follow the development, but it's not ready yet to host ourselves.
All right. Moving on to the next question, this one for Gerard. What does it look like when AI isn't working as planned? What are some of the risks when AI goes wrong? I know we've touched on a little bit of these, but I believe you had some specific examples that you would like to show.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has seen the failure modes and the screenshot on the social media about how ChatGPT can go wrong. If you can just switch on the next slide, that's the stuff that most people have been talking about, which is hallucination, which technically is more confabulation, but that's very getting into the details. But basically, the LLM is just inventing stuff, providing wrong answer. There is a lot of things about invalid reasoning, logic issues. So when you ask the model to go step by step into solving a problem, they have some major failures. Illustrated on the social media, it's mainly on the arithmetic exercise where they are counting something and they are doing step by step, making a complex reasoning, and at the end, that's the wrong answer. You don't understand why. Yeah, that's one of their limits. And another point is more on controlling the verbosity and the way the LLM is answering the question, because sometimes the tone is not adapted for customer support. Sometimes it's a little bit too strict. Sometimes it's a little bit too casual. You really want to fine tune and to adapt a little bit your model to get the right message and to ensure that it is understood by the client. So these are more or less the general one. But if you go into the specific hardware troubleshooting, I was playing with GPT-4. So this is not the ChatGPT interface because I'm using the technical API here, but just a few cases of wrong answer. So WG322E9, it's a Positech Workix chainsaw, and it's saying that the weight is 3.6 without the battery. It's 1 kilogram away. It's 2.4 or something like that. So it's a little detail, but that's quite inaccurate. And that's something, some of this fine detail, the model doesn't have understanding of that and understanding of the importance of that. So for the weight of a machine, this is not too bad. This is not dramatic, but there is some other troubleshooting cases where it could be dramatic. The next one, the inaccurate answer, is actually quite funny. So this is for Kenwood coffee machine, but this is I don't know exactly how to say in English, the drip coffee machine, where you just put coffee pre-grind, and you're asking how to grind the coffee with that machine, and it's giving you an answer on how to do that, but the machine cannot do that. Just the LLM doesn't know that because it's a precise model with precise capabilities, and it doesn't know that. And what I was very surprised is I just changed one word between the top and the bottom. So with to grind coffee bean in my Kenwood and to grind coffee bean with my Kenwood, and then it understands the Kenwood is a toaster. No, the model I'm talking about is a coffee machine. That's not a toaster. Just changing one word and the LLM is completely wrong. So this is just showcase the sensitivity of this model. I was actually not looking for that error. I just found it by chance, if I can say, by a little bit of trial and error. but I can attest that it was not too difficult. I mean, these are not rare cases of inaccurate and wrong answer. Then on the next one, the dangerous answer, yeah, this one. This is actually a more technical answer. Again, I took an example of the chainsaw because, yeah, chainsaw are like dangerous stuff, but you have a lot of DIY tool or gardening equipment that can be human. I mean, they have safety issue. And in this case, you are trying to mount a generic blade on the chainsaw. This is what the user is asking for. So yeah, the LLM just answered, try to do like this, like that. But in the user manual of this chainsaw, it's specifically forbidden to use a generic blade because, yeah, you are avoiding the guarantee, but there is a safety risk because you never know that this blade is compatible or not with your equipment. And yeah, changing a blade can be a human safety risk. So the LLM doesn't care, really. It's just providing answer and forced sometimes to provide answer in cases where this could be dramatic. And a last example that was a little bit funny for me, but probably not for DeLonghi. So you are trying to ask a generic question about the DeLonghi coffee machine. The answer is actually generic steps, which are valuable. These are accurate, check the water tank, verify the filter and stuff like that. But then it's saying, okay, if it's not working, try another brand. Go and buy another machine that is not DeLonghi. I don't think you want your conversational support agent to do this kind of advice. So just specific example of, for me, what I can understand from bad cases to dramatic failure. And again, it's highlighting that for hardware troubleshooting, details matter. And generic LLMs, they are very bright. They have been trained on a huge amount of data, but they don't have the tiny details that matters a lot for hardware troubleshooting. And this is a problem that will be very difficult to work around. I mean, by design, they cannot be specialists. So it will take a lot of time and still a lot of research to make this kind of issue fixed, if I can say. So these are just examples on the what are the failure modes and what are the risks for our vertical. But I think it's highlighting quite brightly how you cannot rely just on LLM by themselves. You need to control, you need to and be sure that they are not going wild. And this is something that needs some human touch and some expertise in the vertical.
Got it. Thank you so much. Yeah, some of those examples definitely make it very clear that it's not ready for kind of mass use, particularly in some of those dangerous cases and brand compliance cases. Yeah, just in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we open the floor up to the audience and everyone gets a chance to ask their questions. So feel free to continue submitting those in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll get to those. Maybe the first one, I'll pass over to you, Omar. Do you have any ethical considerations or concerns around AI, ChatGPT, around the implementation of those, I'm assuming, in your organizations?
Yeah, I think anything of that nature, I just take a conservative approach. So we want to make sure that everything is accurate. If we're putting it out there, whatever the tool is, right? I mean, it needs to be ready to go, ready to rock and roll, approved language, anything of that nature. So yeah, we want to consider all those. And as you saw some of those examples, right, we want to be, as the technology develops, we want to be conservative and then have a more relaxed approach, possibly over time.
Got it. Yeah, just kind of keep tabs on it as it's developing, make sure that we do the right thing. I know there is a question here, I believe for Galina, and you might have answered it in the chat already, but can the AI rewrite feature help to reformulate English-based, very technical terminology, demanding content into simplified English for non-English native speakers?
Yes, and I'll just expand on the answer that I gave in chat, that yes, it's one of its two jobs. So we played a lot with this feature to make it rewrite very technical and very geeky explanations into something more, for a casual reader, while what's important, still preserving the facts. So it doesn't start, as in Gerard's example, hallucinate about the weight of the appliance, because that's clear responsibility to give people accurate information on behalf of the brand. I think we succeeded. Obviously, we keep monitoring automatically the success rate. So whenever someone rejects the rewrite, doesn't feel it's good, Gerard's Gerard's machine learning model gets a little bit of food for thought and learning. So the more you use it, the more it will help our model train its brains to use your specific lingo, but it's already pretty good at that. It simplifies those long and geeky texts into something human-friendly.
Got it. That's really helpful. Let's see. We have another one popping into the chat. LLMs are improving fast. What about automatically updating content already processed by rewrite? Maybe Galina, again, this might be best for you.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we want to do, actually. So when we use and accumulate knowledge from using AI copy editor in on request mode, so when human requests it, when we learn more about its patterns, we actually considered putting it on autopilot and making it work in the background. So basically, it could give you a better suggestion for text when it feels like this suggestion is appropriate. There is always a fine balance between being useful and being annoying, so we want to be mindful of that. But it's one of the directions. So it's great to hear from this question that we are thinking in the same way. So yeah, potentially it could be on autopilot.
Fantastic. And then Omar, I actually have a question for you. You mentioned, creating a job when you started working with Mavenoid, and do you envision this kind of becoming a bigger part of support organizations, these people who work specifically with tools and AI and they're kind of core part of their job descriptions? Is that something you expect to expand amongst more support organizations?
Yeah, I mean, we have benefited from that position, and also the savings that Mavenoid has helped us with through self-support has justified that position. But it's a fine balance, right? We don't want to have too many, right? The more advancement in technology should allow for less and less involvement, especially on the AI side of things over time. But it's really expanding our toolbox and being able to be in control and have this technology at our fingertips. As I mentioned before, if it's generating an image, I mean, in the past that I've seen that you have to send a request over to like the marketing department. Sometimes they have to shoot, the photo, and that takes a lot of time. If the AI eventually can generate those photos in a certain particular way, we can do it on the spot and not have to go through that time. So then we can get a lot of that content out there much quicker and into the tool for the end consumer.
Got it. It makes sense. The kind of multiplier piece as well. I know we're over at time, so with that, I will do one last plug before we wrap up. On July 6th, we'll be doing an AMA with Galina, probably Gerard, and some other folks on the product team here at Mavenoid as well. We'll talk through what are some of the recent AI advancements in hardware support, particular to the Mavenoid product. So for anyone who has those continued questions that get a little bit deeper and technical into how our product works, definitely register and join us for that session. We'd be more than happy to answer all of those. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. In particular, I wanted to thank Galina, Gerard, and Omar for joining us and providing their insight. So yeah, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.